He told me I was making progress. The room smelled like lavender and old carpet. 7 chairs arranged in a circle, the kind with metal frames and fabric seats that always felt too warm. A clock on the wall, its second hand stuck between the 4 and 5. A water cooler in the corner that hummed whenever the silence lasted too long. Every Tuesday evening at 7, we sat in that circle and learned how to name our pain. I had been there for 3 months when I first noticed that Dr. Brennan watched me differently than the others. This isn't fiction. This is how trust becomes danger, one small kindness at a time. I joined the group because my sister insisted. After Marcus left, I had stopped answering calls, stopped opening mail, stopped doing anything that required me to acknowledge I was still a person who existed in the world. The divorce papers came on a Thursday. I signed them on a Friday. By Saturday, I couldn't remember what day it was anymore. The community center where we met was on Maple Street, above a dance studio. You could hear music through the floor during our sessions, faint piano, children's feet moving in rhythm. Dr. Brennan said the sound was therapeutic, that healing needed a backdrop of life continuing. He was 42, I learned later. Soft-spoken, he wore cardigans with elbow patches and wire-rimmed glasses that caught the overhead light. When he listened, he leaned forward slightly, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes never leaving your face. The others in the group had their own fractures. Linda's husband drank. James had lost his daughter in a custody battle. Carmen's mother was dying of something that had no cure. We learned each other's stories the way you learn a language, haltingly at first, then with increasing fluency, until we could finish each other's sentences about suffering. I didn't know then that this would be the last place I felt safe. The world before the fracture looked like this. I would arrive at 6:55, park under the elm tree that dropped leaves onto my windshield. I'd sit in the car for a few minutes, listening to the end of whatever song was playing, building the courage to walk inside. The stairs creaked on the 3rd and 7th steps. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and someone's microwaved lunch. Dr. Brennan would already be there, arranging the chairs, setting out paper cups beside the water cooler. He'd look up when I entered and smile. Not broadly, just a slight upward curve that felt like recognition. "Good evening, Sarah," he'd say. Always my name. Always that same tone, warm and professional, like a blanket folded precisely at the foot of a bed. The sessions followed a pattern. Check-ins first, going around the circle, then a discussion topic, boundaries or forgiveness or the difference between loneliness and being alone. Dr. Brennan guided us gently, never pushing, always reflecting our words back to us in ways that made them sound wiser than they'd felt, leaving our mouths. "What I'm hearing," he'd say, "is that you're learning to honor your own needs. Sounds like you're beginning to separate his choices from your worth." That's a profound insight, Sarah. Tell us more. After 8 weeks, I realized I was speaking more than anyone else in the group. My voice had become the one that filled the silences. The others would nod when I shared. Linda once reached across the circle and squeezed my hand. "You always know how to say what we're all feeling," she told me. Dr. Brennan wrote something in his notebook. The pen made a soft scratching sound against paper. The hairline crack appeared on a Tuesday in October. The session had ended. Everyone was filing out, pulling on jackets, making small talk about the weather turning cold. I was the last to leave, as I often was, gathering my things slowly, still caught in whatever emotion the evening had stirred up. Dr. Brennan was stacking chairs. "Sarah," he said, "do you have a moment?" I stopped at the door. "Of course." He sat down the chair he was holding. "I wanted to tell you how impressed I've been with your progress, the way you've opened up to the group, the insights you've shared. It's been remarkable to witness." Something in my chest loosened. "Thank you. That means a lot. I wonder if you'd be interested in doing some additional work, one-on-one sessions, outside the group context. I think you're ready for deeper exploration, and the group setting can sometimes limit what we're able to access." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. From downstairs, piano music drifted up through the floor. "I didn't know you did individual therapy," I said. "I'm selective about it, but I think it could be really beneficial for you. We could meet here or somewhere more comfortable, maybe coffee, something less formal. Sometimes the most honest conversations happen outside of clinical spaces." I should have heard it then. The slight shift in his voice, the way comfortable hung in the air a beat too long. But I was still someone who trusted that healing came from people who said they wanted to help. "I'll think about it," I told him. He smiled. Of course. No pressure. The offer stands whenever you're ready. I drove home with the windows down, even though it was cold. The air felt necessary against my face. Over the next few weeks, the pattern changed. Dr. Brennan began asking me to stay after sessions. Just for a few minutes, he'd say. He wanted to check in, see how I was processing the group discussions. These conversations stretched longer each time. 10 minutes became 20, 20 became 45. He started texting between sessions. Just resources at first, articles about trauma recovery, podcasts about rebuilding after betrayal. Then the messages became more frequent. Good morning texts, asking how my day was going, saying he'd been thinking about something I'd said in group and wanted to explore it further. I told myself this was normal, that therapists who cared about their patients went the extra mile, that I was lucky to have someone so invested in my healing. I didn't tell anyone about the messages. Not my sister, not Linda from the group. They felt private, like something that would lose its meaning if exposed to outside air. The receipts were all there, digital and time-stamped. But I wasn't looking at them as evidence yet. I was reading them as proof that someone saw me, valued me, believed I was worth the additional attention. By November, we had started meeting for coffee. The first time was innocent. A Tuesday afternoon at a cafe downtown, not the community center. He said he had a cancellation in his schedule and wondered if I wanted to grab lunch and continue a conversation we'd started in group about setting boundaries with ex-partners. He ordered black coffee and a croissant he didn't eat. I ordered tea. I let go cold while we talked. The conversation moved easily from therapeutic to personal. He told me about his divorce years ago, how his ex-wife had called him emotionally unavailable, how he'd spent years in his own therapy trying to understand what that meant. I think that's why I do this work, he said, pulling apart the croissant with his fingers, trying to help others avoid the mistakes I made. I found myself leaning in. It must be hard holding everyone else's pain. It is, he said. He looked at me across the table, and his eyes were tired in a way I hadn't noticed in the group. But some people make it feel less like work. The words settled between us like snow. We met again the following week, then twice the next week, always during the day, always in public places, coffee shops, park benches, once in a bookstore where we browsed the psychology section and he recommended titles I should read. The text messages increased. He started sending them late at night. Thinking of you, hope you're sleeping well. Remember what we talked about today? You're stronger than you know. I began to wait for them. The small vibration of my phone, his name on the screen, felt like proof that I mattered. In group on Tuesdays, he treated me the same as always, professional, balanced, attentive to everyone equally. But I knew something the others didn't. I knew that afterward we had a different relationship, something more. I told myself it was mentorship. The evening he asked to meet alone, outside of any public space, was the first time I felt my heartbeat stutter. It was late December, the group had just finished. Everyone was talking about holiday plans. I had mentioned casually that I'd be spending Christmas by myself this year. My sister was traveling. I hadn't made new friends since the divorce. The thought of being alone didn't bother me, I'd said. I was learning to be comfortable with my own company. After everyone left, Dr. Brennan approached me. I don't like the thought of you being alone on Christmas, he said. I'll be fine, I told him. Really? He was standing closer than usual. I could smell his cologne, something woody, subtle. I have a cabin about an hour north, he said. Very quiet, peaceful. I go there sometimes when I need to decompress. I was thinking of heading up there for a few days after Christmas. You're welcome to join me, just as friends. Just a quiet space where you can rest and not have to pretend you're okay if you're not. The water cooler hummed. The second hand on the clock was still stuck. That's very kind, I said slowly. But I'm not sure. Sarah. He reached out and touched my arm. His hand was warm through my sweater sleeve. You've been working so hard. You deserve a break. No therapy, no processing, just peace. I promise, it's nothing more than one friend offering another friend a safe place to land. I looked at his hand on my arm. I looked at his face, open and earnest and concerned. Let me think about it, I said. He squeezed gently, then let go. Of course, but Sarah, the offer is genuine. I care about your well-being, more than you might realize. I left the building and sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could start the engine. I didn't go to the cabin, but I also didn't stop the text messages, didn't stop meeting him for coffee, didn't tell anyone that something felt wrong, because naming it would mean acknowledging that I had been complicit in letting it reach this point. In January, he suggested we stop meeting in public. I worry about confidentiality, he said. People talk. You know how small this town is. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea and jeopardize your progress or my professional standing. So we started meeting at his office. The same building, but on Thursday afternoons, when no one else was there, he'd lock the door. For privacy, he said. We'd sit in chairs facing each other, the way we did in group. But the conversations were different now. He'd ask about my marriage, but the questions went deeper, into territory that felt less like therapy and more like confession. He wanted details. How Marcus had touched me, how often, what I'd wanted that I hadn't gotten. Understanding your intimate patterns is crucial to healing, he'd explain. We need to excavate these experiences fully. I answered because I trusted him, because he was the expert, because saying no would mean admitting that I no longer knew what was appropriate. One Thursday in February, he asked if he could touch my hand. Sometimes physical grounding helps with trauma processing, he said. May I? I let him take my hand. His thumb moved in slow circles across my palm. How does this feel? He asked. Fine, I said. My voice sounded far away. Just fine. Good, I corrected. It feels good. He smiled. Good is progress. The unraveling happened slowly, then all at once. I began to lose track of which version of our relationship was real. In group, he was Dr. Brennan, professional and boundaried. In his office on Thursdays, he was Michael, which he'd asked me to call him in private. In text messages, he was someone else entirely, flirtatious, needy, telling me I was the only person who truly understood him. I stopped going to my sister's for dinner, stopped returning Linda's texts asking if I was okay. I missed a group session for the first time, and Michael texted, "Where are you? I was looking forward to seeing you." The Thursday sessions stretched longer, 3 hours, sometimes 4. We talked less about my trauma and more about his loneliness, how his colleagues didn't appreciate him, how his ex-wife had never really known him, how I was different from his other patients, special, someone he'd been waiting to meet. You understand that we have something unique, don't you? He said one evening. It was dark outside. We'd been sitting in his office since 3. This kind of connection doesn't happen often. I don't know what this is, I said. My hands were shaking. It's trust, he said. Pure trust, the foundation of all real intimacy. He moved his chair closer. His knee touched mine. Sarah, I need to be honest with you about something. My pulse was loud in my ears. I've developed feelings for you, real feelings. I know that's not protocol. I know it crosses lines, but I also know that feelings this strong can't be ignored. They're telling us something. I should have stood up. I should have left. I should have recognized this moment for what it was. Instead, I said, I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything, he said. I'm not asking you to. I'm just being honest. Isn't that what we've been working toward? Radical honesty? He reached for my face. His hand cupped my cheek. Tell me to stop, he said softly. If you want me to stop, just say so. I didn't say anything. I sat frozen, my mind screaming at my body to move while my body refused to obey. He leaned forward and kissed me. The confrontation happened 3 weeks later in a place I hadn't expected. I ran into Linda at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, examining avocados. And when she saw me, her face went through a series of expressions I couldn't decode. Sarah, she said. Hi. Hi. I moved to put a container of strawberries in my cart, just to have something to do with my hands. We've missed you at group. Are you okay? I'm fine, just busy. She set down the avocado she was holding. Can we talk? Maybe grab coffee? I wanted to say no, but something in her expression, concern mixed with something else, something heavier, made me nod. We sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks away. Linda wrapped her hands around her mug and looked at me for a long time before speaking. I need to tell you something, she said finally. And I need you to listen without getting defensive. My stomach turned cold. You're not the first. 3 words. That's all it took for the entire structure to collapse. Dr. Brennan, Michael, whatever he's calling himself with you, you're not the first patient he's done this with. There was a woman last year. Before you joined the group, she ended up filing a complaint with the licensing board. I couldn't speak. It's a pattern. He identifies someone vulnerable, someone who reminds him of something or someone, and he convinces them they're special, that they have a unique connection, that the rules don't apply because what they have is different. How do you know this? Because she told me before she left. She wanted me to warn others, but I didn't know who to warn. And then I saw how he looked at you, how he started keeping you after group. And I should have said something sooner, but I didn't know how, and I'm sorry. The coffee shop was too bright. The espresso machine hissed and screamed. Nothing happened, I heard myself say. Linda's eyes filled with something too sad to be pity. Sarah. Nothing happened, I said again. But we both knew I was lying. I didn't go back to group. I didn't answer Michael's texts. And there were many. First concerned, then confused, then angry. I thought we were honest with each other. I thought you were different. Don't throw away what we've built out of fear. I blocked his number. I deleted his contact information. I removed every article he'd sent me, every podcast link, every piece of evidence that he'd once had access to my inner world. My sister came over one evening and found me sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. Tell me, she said. So I did. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't lecture. She just sat with me on the couch and let me cry until I couldn't cry anymore. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. I let him. He manipulated you. That's what predators do. They make you think you're choosing them when really they've already chosen you. The word felt too big, too dramatic. But when I replayed every conversation, every text, every moment I'd thought was connection and realized was calculation, the word began to fit. The days after were the quietest of my life. I stopped going places where I might see him. I changed my grocery store, my pharmacy, the routes I drove through town. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Carmen from the group called once. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail saying she understood why I'd left, that Linda had told her some of what happened, that the group had confronted Dr. Brennan and he'd closed it down immediately, that there were rumors he was being investigated again, that this time there might be real consequences. I never called her back. I thought about the other woman, the one who'd come before me. I wondered if she'd felt the same hollow shame, the sense of having been excavated and left empty. I wondered if she blamed herself the way I blamed myself, for not seeing sooner, for not trusting her instincts when they screamed. I thought about all the true things he'd said, that I was making progress, that I was strong, that I deserved healing, and how he'd used those truths as camouflage for everything that came after. I thought about the lavender-scented room, the stuck clock, the water cooler's hum, how I'd thought I was going there to be saved. The reckoning came slowly, in the form of understanding I didn't want. I replayed every conversation and saw the architecture of his manipulation, how he'd established trust, then slowly violated it in ways too small to name at first, how he'd isolated me from the group while making me feel chosen, how he'd shared his own vulnerability to make me feel we were equals when we never were. I thought about power and how invisibly it operates, how someone can say they're helping you while actively harming you, and the cognitive dissonance becomes a trap you can't escape because escaping means admitting you were trapped. I went back into therapy, this time with a woman recommended by my sister. I told her everything. She listened without judgment, then said something I hadn't expected. Grief is appropriate here, she said. You lost something real. The relationship was false, but your feelings were genuine. Your hope was genuine. You're allowed to mourn that. So I did. I mourned the version of healing I'd believed in, where kindness was always kind and help was always helpful, and trust was a simple transaction between honest people. Spring came. I started leaving my house again. I joined a different support group, this one run by 2 facilitators. Always 2, with strict ethical guidelines posted on the wall. I was wary at first, unwilling to speak. But slowly I began to trust that healing could happen without coercion, that vulnerability didn't have to be weaponized. One evening, a new woman joined the group. Young, recently divorced, wearing the same expression I'd worn a year ago, hope mixed with desperation. I watched how she listened, how she leaned in when the facilitator spoke, how she was searching for someone to tell her she'd be okay. After the session, I asked if she wanted to get coffee. We sat in a cafe and I told her my story. Not all of it, just enough. I told her to trust herself, to notice if anyone made her feel special in a way that required isolation, to remember that real healing never demands secrecy. She thanked me. I don't know if she heard me, but I needed to say it anyway. Michael called once, months later, from a different number. I answered before I realized who it was. "Sarah," he said, "please don't hang up." I should have, but I didn't. "I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you, that what we had was real to me. I know I made mistakes, but—" "You didn't make mistakes," I said quietly. "You made choices. You chose to use your position to access someone vulnerable. You chose to violate professional ethics. You chose me because you knew I would trust you." Silence on the line. "I reported you," I said, "to the licensing board. I don't know if it will matter, but I did it anyway." "Sarah, don't call me again." Hung up. My hand was shaking, but this time with something that felt almost like strength. The ending isn't neat. There was no dramatic confrontation, no public reckoning. The licensing board investigation went on for months, and I never learned the outcome. I heard through Carmen that he moved to a different state, that he was still practicing under a different name. Sometimes I still think about the Tuesday evenings in that lavender-scented room. How I'd arrived broken and left more fractured. How the person who promised to heal me became another wound I'd have to recover from. But I also think about Linda, reaching across the coffee shop table to tell me the truth even when it was hard. About my sister, sitting with me in the dark. About the woman I told my story to, and whether she carried it with her like armor. I learned that predation doesn't announce itself. It arrives wearing the mask of care. It speaks the language of healing while doing harm. It knows that the most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in truth. I learned that you can survive someone weaponizing your vulnerability against you, that you can rebuild trust even after it's been demolished, that healing is possible, just not in the way I'd imagined. Some nights I still lie awake and wonder if I'll ever stop doubting my instincts, ever stop second-guessing every kindness offered. But mostly I've made peace with the fact that what happened to me was neither my fault nor my failure. It was simply what happens when someone chooses to abuse the power they're given. I never saw Michael again. I don't need to. His voice is already fading, his face already blurring. What remains is sharper, the knowledge that I survived something designed to consume me, and that survival, however unglamorous and incomplete, is its own form of victory. I didn't go to therapy to meet someone. I went to heal. And eventually, against the odds, and in spite of him, I did. The door stayed unlocked. I learned to walk through it on my own, retry,